A lot about our community since Denver 7 first launched our 360 franchise nearly 3 years ago.
Now, our very first 360 topic focused on gentrification and race relations in Denver's 5 Points neighborhood, along with the encroaching development of the Rhino District.
So tonight, given the current focus on the COVID crisis and the Black Lives Matter movement, we're revisiting the issue.
Denver 7's Russell Haythorne takes us back to where it all began.
It's a sign that became a flashpoint for a conversation that was perhaps overdue.
Gentrification is another example of entire communities being erased.
Every corner you turn, you're losing culture. You're not gaining culture.
The now infamous sign outside Ink Coffee in 5 Points read, "Happily gentrifying the neighborhood since 2014.
Gentrification is not a joke."
It set off a firestorm of controversy and a heated debate amongst neighbors.
A lot of people that have been here for a long time can't afford to live here anymore.
You can't stop progress, especially in a city as fast growing and as desirable to live in as Denver.
So how far have we come since that gentrification debate nearly 3 years ago? Let's start with brother Jeff Ferrard.
Denver is becoming whiter and whiter and wealthier and wealthier.
If you ask brother Jeff, the city of Denver's policies still very much favored developers over culturally diverse neighborhoods.
And when you have policies that are just saying, let's go for the highest bidder, then you're going to have a city that escalates out of control and out of reach for everyone. You have been warned. We have Penfield tape.
During his daily podcast, brother Jeff discusses gentrification with guests like former mayoral candidate Penfield Tate.
How little we actually know.
Both of whom are critical of the current mayor for a lack of balanced policy.
If you're the developer, then it's a beautiful thing. But if you're being displaced on the other side of it, it is a failure.
The 5 Points also still has battle scars left by gang violence in the 80s and 90s.
At a particular time, it got a negative connotation that was related to violence.
Step outside brother Jeff's cultural center today, and hints of what makes Welton Street a cultural hub are still here. The jazz clubs, the diners, and some of the people.
Definitely one of the most sacred streets.
But step off of Welton Street just over to Larimer and you might not even recognize the neighborhood as 5 Points. In fact, most don't.
Pretty sure we're in Rhino.
I would have said Rhino.
Rhino, River North.
I call it Rhino.
Rhino.
Right now we're standing in 5 Points.
As urban development expert and former mayoral candidate Jamie Gillis explains, Rhino is not an actual neighborhood.
Rhino is really just an overlay district that overlays 4 historical statistical neighborhoods: 5 Points, Cole, Globeville, and Elaria Swansea.
Rhino is an arts district that only came into existence as a nonprofit art collective in 2005.
They were just working to establish themselves as artists.
And yet, therein lies the problem.
The pain point was coming in this rebranding or a new identity.
That new identity created all kinds of new interest along the once gritty corridors of Brighton Boulevard, Walnut, Blake, and Larimer Streets. Old warehouses and rundown shops offered the perfect setting for what would soon sprout as a bustling hipster haven.
The land was cheap.
In 2010, land here sold for $25 a square foot. Today, it's $350 a square foot.
The intentions were good to try to uplift this area and serve everybody, but perhaps the process was not always right.
It's all tied to systemic racism.
Katia Campbell teaches intercultural conflict and diversity at MSU Denver.
When we have people pushed out and for various reasons, we lose that sense of community.
She says the 5 Points is a microcosm of what's happening all across America.
All throughout our history in the United States, we've seen how people of color, cultures, the various cultures have been erased.
And most experts agree, while the damage is done, a serious shift in policy can lead to real change.
Even debt management, even programs like that can be helpful.
There is hope in young Black entrepreneurs like Akiela Ai.
People move to these neighborhoods because they want to experience the culture and the vibrancy of what the city has to offer. But then by moving in here, they push the culture out.
She's a relative newcomer to the business world, already raising thousands in capital for a new retail store she's planning to open on Welton Street.
So I would very much like to revitalize that.
Although she's still in need of additional funding, her vision is shared by many young people here.
That 5 Points is essential to our culture.
I like to see it succeed, and I like to see it thrive, and I like to see it grow. It's a great community, one of the best in the United States.
Have a peace force as opposed to a police force.
And that brings us back to Brother Jeff, who fights every day for his neighborhood.
Those that cannot afford, $7 cups of coffee.
He says there must be a balance from state and city policymakers. Embrace healthy growth and the money that comes with it, but create a slowdown which favors culture, even if it costs you money.
You have to honor tradition.
Because without balance,
what you have is another beer garden. What you have is another dog park. What you have is another paved street and a Tesla going down it. Do you want a great meal without any seasoning on it? It's the community that provides that seasoning.
Russell Haythorne, Denver 7.